Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is the top of the hour. It's time to get started. Good day to you all. Everybody, let's get started with today's webinar. The subject of the Go Global webinar today, the series continues, and it's understanding VAT and selling online in Europe. Welcome. Thank you for joining us wherever you may be. To those of you in the US, a very good day to you, good morning, and to those of you in Europe, a good afternoon or even a good evening. Also, I want to say good day to the many of you who will be listening to this and tuning into this webinar on demand when you want, as this webinar is recorded. So wherever you are, whatever time of day or night it is with you, you are welcome. My name is John Worthington. I am CEO here at IBT Online, and I have the pleasure of being your host here today, the pleasure of introducing the Go Global webinar for today, Understanding VAT and Selling Online in Europe. We are passionate about our online global series. The webinars are all about knowledge, learning, and understanding in this fast-moving and ever-changing online and international world. And there's always more to learn, there's always more to keep up to date with, and European online opportunities with their accompanying VAT implications for your business are a great example. European e-commerce environment, well, that is booming, and the fiscal environment is ever-changing. So today's webinar is absolutely on score for you today. Before we get started, I'm going to do a little housekeeping so you know what to expect from the online global webinar. For those of you returning, welcome back, and you know the drill. This webinar is one of our series, the Go Global webinar series. It's all about helping you grow your sales and grow your brands and your businesses globally. The series is over 4 years old now, so we have a rich catalog of recorded webinars available to you on demand. So all you have to do is go back to find www.ibt.onl and /resources. There is also a list of future webinars coming up, and if you want to see those, go to the same and you'll see future webinars. This webinar will be approximately 45 minutes long. Brief housekeeping from myself, and then I will be handing over to Susanna and Britta. There will be polls, so please be ready with your mice. And there will be time for your questions at the end, so please go to the question box. The question box, you can see it's called questions. It's third from the bottom on your screen. Open it up and please submit your questions so that we can answer them. There is a chat box to share your ideas and responses. At the end of this webinar, I will be asking you to give us an extra 15 seconds of your time to give us some helpful feedback so we can do better in the future. And finally, do know that on Friday, you'll receive a recording of this webinar, which will be prepared by our back office and then sent to you by email. So now sit back, relax, enjoy your morning coffee, your afternoon tea, or your evening drink as we get going. The theme of today, Going Global, Understanding VAT and Selling Online in Europe. I'm proud today to be joined by our two expert guest speakers, Susanna Hardy, the most helpful of the IBT Online team, as Susanna is all about client services, of which she is the director. Britta Eriksson, who founded Euro VAT Refund way back in 1992, has over 25 years knowledge and understanding, and is the company's president and CEO since the start. Do know that this webinar has been prepared with a lot of hard work. Susanna and Britta have been pulling together the useful information to help you understand about VAT and your sales that are online in Europe. IBT Online and Euro VAT, we are directly implicated every day as we are delivering our e-commerce, our online global program in Europe, and Euro VAT is providing the VAT refund solutions to companies. So every day, we have valuable, up-to-date practical experience and first-hand case studies and unique insights for you. Two words on our two experts that you see in front of you on the screen. On the left-hand side is Susanna Hardy. She heads up our global operations, focusing on helping companies use the IBT Online global range of services to develop their businesses internationally. And if, when you're listening to Susanna, you feel that and you hear that she sounds a little American, well, that is because in many ways she is. Susanna is half German, was born in Freiburg, was educated and worked in the US, that is in New York, as well as the UK Germany, and France. Susanna brings her expertise in international online business and development and marketing, and has worked with a wide spectrum of E and M commerce companies to help them succeed in their export markets. Now to Britta, who founded Euro VAT Refund Inc. over 25 years ago, and that company has now grown to be the leading US financial services company specializing in assisting companies with VAT management, VAT registration, and of course, very importantly, refunds when they do business internationally. Britta is today one of the most acknowledged value-added experts, value-added tax experts, frequently informing and working with tax managers within small to mid-sized companies, that is Fortune 500 companies, as well as their counterparts in Europe. In addition, Britta provides VAT information for articles and newspapers and is often held to account and ask questions, as she will be answering your questions later. 2 words on IBT Online. IBT Online is a privately held company, both US and European. IBT stands for International Business and Technologies, and all of that online. We've been in business since 2002, so that's over 16 years, and we have come a long way, and we're proud to say so have our clients. We're proud of our International Trade Awards and winning the Online Global Program Award, which combines website localization, international online marketing, and e-commerce, serving over 400 companies and over 1,000 online global programs. Now, with that as the introduction, I will be handing over to Susanna, who will be kicking off and diving down into the nuts and bolts of the subject as we really get to grips with understanding VAT and selling online in Europe. Susanna, are you there?
I am. Thank you very much, John. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about e-commerce and selling in Europe and VAT and how those two can be combined to make great sales. And as John was saying, here at IBT, we are really all about getting your business growing your business online globally with website localization and online marketing, and then for Britta for the VAT side. So we've divided the presentation into a few different sections, and hopefully you will have some time also for some questions at the end, which we would look forward to. So as I said, we're going to go straight into the presentation. I'm going to be talking about European e-commerce landscape, and then Britta is going to be talking about how that works, and VAT and e-commerce in particular. And then I've left a little bit of time just to briefly review some case studies on e-commerce and VAT, and then looking forward to your questions. So jumping straight into it, just to give you a little sort of landscape, quick overview of the European e-commerce world that we're going to talk about now. So, as you know, Europe, in terms of the EU, is comprised of 28 different member states, 28 different countries. Greater Europe, beyond the EU, includes a few other countries like Switzerland and Norway, but the bulk of what we call Europe is really the EU. And the numbers here that you have in this box in blue on the right-hand side of your screen, that refers to the European Union. So, and I wanted to compare that with the USA to give you also some comparisons so you can see the types of different sizes and types of different markets. In terms of overall GDP, the US at the moment, given the dollar parity exchange, is about $1 trillion greater size than the total EU. In terms of population, the EU is definitely larger. And in terms of number of e-shoppers, it's about equivalent. I think that's what's really interesting as well. It just means that there's a lot more upside as well in terms of the penetration rate of e-commerce in Europe. And you're seeing that in the stats. The e-commerce growth rates, whether it's B2C or B2B, are all double-digit throughout the European Union, and tend to be really very strong, especially in the south, Spain, Italy, Portugal, things like that, even stronger than the more mature markets of Northern European markets, whether that's Sweden and the UK. I wanted also to point out just a couple of sort of big, bold statistics about the online environment. 85% of people in Europe now have internet at home, and that's typically broadband now. Yes, and these numbers are very similar to what you have in the USA. In the USA, it's about 88% have internet at home. In Europe, about 85. 71% of individuals use the internet daily in Europe. In the USA, it's about 75%. So again, very similar numbers. So if you say, if I'm sitting here in the USA and I'm saying this is a very developed, internet savvy, complex market, expect a very similar environment across Europe. I think so what I want to say, on the one side, there's a lot of similarities. There's also some major differences. Just looking at some of those similarities for a moment, though, if you look at how Europeans would go and research online before actually buying, that's typically about sort of 50% of consumers are looking on the web before going out actually and buying things. That's very similar to what you have in the environment of the United States. Equally, what type of websites and apps used by consumers is, again, very similar. I'm sorry, I don't have these exact stats for business to business environment. It's a little bit trickier to find those more detailed stats for the B2B world. But in terms of the B2C world, you can see that it's really a very similar online environment from Europe and the United States. Moving on, I wanted to show you this in terms of the B2B side. This is actually, I think, quite interesting. And as John said, you will be getting a copy of this slide deck. So I apologize for this slide, the tiny little writing that's on your screen. But I wanted to highlight that about 80% of European businesses now have their own websites. And about half use actively social media. Again, these are very similar numbers to the United States. In other words, the internet, the use of the internet and social media is ubiquitous in terms of business and in terms of consumer. And it's sophisticated as the US, as similarly as in Europe. The chart at the bottom is actually quite interesting because it shows B2B, the closest numbers I can get in terms of business to business activity, in terms of both the type of company, whether it's a small, medium, or large in Europe, and what types of activity is doing. So the orange bars, the very long bars, are web direct sales, and the shorter, bluer bars are EDI, electronic data information bars. So that's more like online ordering from existing suppliers. I think what's really startling about this is how strong the direct web sales are nowadays across Europe in the B2B world. And it's not at all just limited to sort of B2B, B2C retailing. This is, manufacturing companies. Over 60% of European manufacturing companies are actively buying and selling on the web. So if you're a B2B company relying on your distributors, it's no longer really fair, or it's no longer really efficient and optimized to say it's okay, we can just rely on our distributors. We can just rely on not having good performing websites in the business to business market. This is simply just, the stats are now showing that in fact more than half of companies are buying online on a very, very regular basis. And if you're anything like sectors like information or professional services, the motor industry, the construction industry, it's more like 70, 80%. Moving on, I want to show also about just a very brief landscape again about e-commerce in general, and the core message that I wanted to bring out was that it's in Europe, it's large, very large, and it's growing. It's extremely mobile orientated and growing more so every year, and it's increasingly cross-border as well. So what we mean by this is that the growth of e-commerce has now reached across all sectors and across all markets, but it is still growing strong, double-digit throughout, even in the more mature markets like the United Kingdom. It is more and more m-commerce, so that even businesses are looking online via their mobile or iPad or any kind of channel that they want, so not just an in the office computer. 15% of European consumers regularly shop online from other European countries. The statistic for B2B is harder to get, but indications are it's more like 30%. So more like a third of European businesses that buy from other businesses are looking across borders. These tend to be very close borders. They're not looking far. If you're German, you're looking in Austria. If you're Austrian, you're maybe looking into Italy. This is very much a neighbor to neighbor. It is still, though, a focus of a core on your existing website. You may be looking internationally, but the statistic says continuously that you buy in your local websites. The other big statistic that you want to know is that it is the EU and European e-commerce is totally dominated by the three largest economies, France, the UK, and Germany. Together, they make up nearly 2/3 of the total volume of European B2C e-commerce. So those are sort of the big landscape pictures. I then also just added a little sort of snapshot of Amazon and the main retailers across Europe in terms of their retail sales and penetration rates across the board. And you'll see that Amazon continues to dominate with about 1/5 of all B2C sales across Europe. So still really the leader, and particularly even in countries like Germany and the UK and so on. So there you go. And as I said, you will be getting the slide deck and can have greater in-depth look at all these. Now, we wanted to say, with all this similarity and stuff, what would though happen if you're online and you were searching for something in different countries? And I thought I would just take a snapshot here on the left-hand side is a snapshot of when you're going on google.com and you're sitting in Illinois. You're sitting in Illinois, in Chicago, whatever, you're sitting there and you say, I want to buy red shoes. Red shoes, you type in. And your screenshot from google.com will probably look something like this. There's a Macy's, and then Nordstrom, and other Bloomingdale's, and other shops like this. I'm sitting in Bristol, in the UK, and I type in Google, and I type google.co.uk, because I don't have google.com as a automatic one. My Google is a UK Google. So I'm doing google.co.uk, and I type in red shoes. I get a very different answer. I get a very different ranking and optimization from Google. And I wanted just to bring that up, and we'll talk about that a little bit more about what that means for that. But it's really, and this is in the same language. What happens when you're doing it in French or in German or Polish? So you can see although there's similarities between the US and UK and similarities between the US and Europe, there are also major differences. John,
Susanna, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I mean, good point. I get it, in which case I guess we're ready for poll number 1. Please, here we go. The first poll launched to go really with that. Do you have localized websites for your export markets? I guess that's going to the question of having a website that enables you to transact, sell online in Europe, market by market. So I'm going to give you some feedback here of what I'm getting. A lot of feedback. Thank you so much for participating. Leading out there, 46% are saying they're thinking about it. 20% are saying yes, but only in a few export markets. I've got 13% are saying yes in all of their main exports. So well done to the 13%. It's gone up to 50% that are thinking about it. Well, I hope that there will be lots of good, useful information as you make your way and make decisions going forward as to how best to go selling online and understanding VAT implications for that. So I'm closing down this poll. Here we go, close it, and I'm handing back to Susanna. Thank you, Susanna.
Thank you very much, John. That's very interesting. I think what we want to do now is show just very quickly, before we pass on to Britta and VAT, a couple of things about websites and online. And from this one example of a US versus UK search, I just want to say how to best understand website localization. And the best way I have to understand it is to understand how search engines work. And search engines like Google are localized. That means that Google has a different Google for every country. So there's 192 different Googles. That's one way to think about it. Google has by far the largest market share across Europe, over 90% in Europe. It has about 67% in the USA. In some markets in Europe, it's almost 100% market share. So really, we're not going to be talking about other search engines today, just really Google, and that's the big one that you've got to please. But I just wanted to, and there's a whole webinar that we're doing at various other times about search engines, about optimization, about localized websites. But just wanted to give you the highlights here, is to say, if you have different markets, you're going to have different results. If you're in the US, it's different from the UK. So while we're talking about a similar business environment, a similar online environment, there are major underlying structural differences between the USA and Europe that you have to take account. And those differences can be complex. But basically, when someone goes online to search for something, the search engine scours through billions of documents and JPEGs and things, and it does two things. It returns the results that are relevant to the searcher's query. And then it ranks those searches results according to the popularity of the websites. So optimizing your website means influencing the relevance and the popularity. And that's what you have to keep in mind. That's one slide just to encapsulate and summarize all of our aspects about website localization. And as I said before, we do have separate webinars just on this. We have a 10-point diagram to show website localization. But one of the key things I wanted to say really was that for us, this is the way that small, mid-sized companies can really punch above their weight on the international markets and in exporting. Not just the big guys, they know how to do it. They've been doing it for quite a long time. But we believe also that the small and medium-sized enterprises can really go international, drive their businesses, drive their sales, their brands, their businesses, growing globally through website localization and online marketing. The last thing I wanted to bring up was just about what makes online success. For us, we've seen over a decade of doing this. Localized websites, yes. Proactive marketing strategies with clearly defined sales objectives to make sure you're getting your return on investment. Great user experience, of course, all those things, but also being compliant. Fiscally, which means VAT and other tax, and also online compliance. And the last thing I will say on this is that we are having a webinar on the 21st of March about the upcoming General Data Protection Regulation, which comes in force on May 2018. Anyone, any company doing business with anyone in Europe is involved and implicated in this and needs to know. So with that, I'm going to hand over to...
Well, Susanna, I'm jumping in again because I have poll number 2. Please,
yes,
everybody,
please, poll number 2.
Grab your mice, give us your opinion. Susanna's just broken it out there. And so we are going to just quickly take a poll about websites being digitally compliant. There you go. Relevant before we dive into the fiscal. So here we go. I'm launching this. Are your websites digitally compliant? Are you ready for May 2018 in Europe? I'm getting 100% no, it's changed now. 50% not sure that they're aware of, but working on it. 27% are saying yes, but only our home website. 13% are saying yes, our home website and major export sites. So some people are on it. Well done. Some people are not sure. That's a good 50%. I'm going to close the poll. I thank you so much. Well, clearly there are issues to be addressed. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, John. That's interesting. Being compliant will become increasingly important as we move into 2018 and beyond, just as it is in the tax world. And with that, I'd like to just pass over to Britta to talk about how VAT works. Britta.
Thank you, Susanna. And I hope you can all hear you. And I thank you very much for listening in today. Next slide, please. So when you do sell internationally goods or services that can be downloaded digital, you do have to consider that there are local taxes that you have to keep in mind and you have to deal with often. And value-added tax, VAT, is one of them. It's an implemented tax almost in every country in the world, certainly in Europe. So that is something you certainly need to be aware of. So I will tell you a little bit what that means for particularly you in US, because you don't have the knowledge usually, and particularly how this works for when you sell e-commerce online services or goods. So how that works, basically, as I said, it's an implemented tax almost every country in the world except United States. It pretty much works the same way. If I just compare with US quickly here, in US we have a sale tax that is applied to goods, not to services generally speaking. That applies to both goods and services. And how the sale tax work in US to compare is that, for example, a computer company in US, when they buy product that they will resell, there is no sale tax. They will only pay sale tax on things they're going to use, like office furniture and so forth. And when they do pay the sale tax, they can't get it back. It is a cost. When they sell, they also look at who do they sell to. If they sell to an end user, such as a private person or a company that will use the product, they have to charge sale tax. They do not charge sale tax when they sell to reseller. So basically in US, you can say that the US government, they really do not get any tax in here until the end user, which is a private person or a company using the product, buys, nothing in before. VAT, on the other hand, is applied to all parts of the distribution and manufacturing chains. So that means that any company in UK or China or Germany or Argentina, all these VAT countries, when they sell within their own country, they have to charge VAT to absolutely everyone. It does not matter who they sell to. They charge VAT. They also pay VAT on everything that they buy, with a few exceptions. So every bill that comes into the office has VAT on it that they have to pay out. This includes all goods they buy, regardless if they're going to resell it or not. It includes all services, travel, marketing, your accountant, your lawyer, and so forth. They all charge VAT. So in the end of the month, they have a lot of VAT that they have collected from their customers. And also they have paid out a lot of that to their vendors. They declare this difference to the tax authorities as through a VAT return, and the difference they pay into the tax authorities. So what that means is that the VAT is something that they charge and pay out, but it never, ever, ever end up as a cost to them. That should never be a cost to a company. It is really only a cost to the private person who buys it in the end. That is a big difference from a sale tax. The sale tax is not collected until the very end. It does become a cost to use company when you have to pay it for something you use. But for VAT, when you deal with all these countries around the world, please expect the VAT can be applied. Do learn about it before you trade in the country, and do think that there should never, ever, ever be a cost to you as a company. It should only end up as a cost to the private person in the end. Next slide. So as I said, implemented tax all over the world call different things. For example, Canada, GST, they have a 5%. China calls the VAT 17%. France, Germany have different names. So Italy, Sweden, UK call it that. In Europe and also most countries around the world, actually, the rate is usually around 20. And in Europe, it can be all the way up to 27% in Hungary. So do be aware of your liabilities, but again, make sure that this doesn't end up as a cost to you, and that takes planning. Next. So what is the difference of the European Union and other countries? There is a big difference, actually, and that is that Europe, the European Union, and also Norway and Switzerland, the other European countries, also some other countries like Australia, for example, it is possible there to trade within the country as a non-European country company, for example, an American company can buy and sell within the European Union. You do not have to have an establishment there. If you just buy and sell products or services, you can do that. They do allow you to do that, and all you have to do is register and think about this value-added tax. You do not necessarily have to have a branch or subsidiary. So that is a great advantage with Europe and Australia and a few other countries. This is not the case in other countries, such as, for example, South America, China, Asia, Africa, and so forth. It's not possible there, generally speaking, to go in and buy and sell products within the country. That does require you to have an establishment. So if you do incur VAT from those countries, for example, you ship a product in there and you get a VAT charge, you cannot get it back. It will become a cost to you, and that is not so good. So therefore, Europe is a great advantage for Europe that they will allow you to do this. But again, you have to think about the VAT up front. And that can happen that you need to register for legal reasons as well, in addition to claim back the VAT. And that could, for example, be when the North American company import and warehouses goods in Europe for e-commerce or other purposes, or when you sell digital services into private people. Next. So when is the VAT registration required then for a North American or any other company outside the European Union? Well, there are a few samples of this, and one is when you sell digital services to private individuals in Europe. So this is a really big thing that most companies are absolutely not aware of. If you start a company in the US, for example, and you sell online to people, normally you have customers from all over the world from day one. Then you do need to be aware of that if you have customers in Europe, as well as actually other countries as well, sometimes they require you to charge VAT to private individuals. So this means, for example, online games, streaming of music, software, clouds, everything that people can download from you. Again, this is if you sell directly, and it doesn't apply if you sell through any app store. If you sell through any app store or platform, they are actually responsible for register for VAT and charge VAT on the product. You are not. So let me give an example. If you sell cloud services, for example, directly to private people in Europe, then you need to register for VAT in one of the countries. For example, UK is a good sample right now before they leave. And you need to charge VAT to all the private people when you sell to the European Union, 20%, and then you need to pay this into the United Kingdom. If you, however, sell an online game through an app store, then you do not need to do this. However, be aware of that if you sell a product into Europe for $100, for example, your customer in Europe is actually paying $120 because the app store is collecting 20% VAT on them too. And another sample here is imported drop shipment of goods within the EU. And for e-commerce, then that applies to if you are, for example, selling through Amazon or eBay in Europe, and you ship in product into one of the fulfillment warehouses. You put them there, you get orders on the website, and you ship from this warehouse in Europe. Then that also requires you to register for VAT and charge VAT. And another sample, if you organize conferences and trade shows, for example, where fees are collected. Next.
Hey, Britta, before we do that, I was going to just quickly jump in and do poll number 3. That was really interesting, and this is directly related. So please, this is our third and I believe final poll. So I'm launching it now. Here we go. It is, what is your biggest VAT challenge? There you go. Britta will be looking at these numbers as well, and we'll be sharing this feedback with you. Keeping informed and updated, collecting all the information, filing VAT, or making payments. Britta, the feedback here, and we can help you going forward, is 50% are saying keeping informed, 7% are saying collecting all of that information, 29% are saying filing VAT, and 5% are saying making payments. So it is really the first one. It's being informed and updated. I want to thank you for this poll. Thank you very much for that feedback. I'm closing the poll and handing back to Britta.
Yeah, thank you. That was interesting to know, and kind of what I expected too, because it is very complicated to keep a track of the rules, that's for sure. Next, please. So first then, to go down here on VAT on digital service. This is again when customer goes in and download something from your website, whatever can be software, streaming music, TV programs, cloud services, and so forth. Then if you sell from any country outside the European Union into the European Union, for example, from USA to Europe, if you do it B2B, business to business, then generally you can do that. You do not have to worry about any VAT or to be registered charged any VAT. You can just simply do that. You actually are required to prove that the business is a business, and that is normally done by collecting a VAT number from them. And this, of course, is kind of hard for the US because it's not in our nature here to collect VAT number from our businesses. So you have, for example, a problem if there's a person from a company ordering on his private credit card something for the company and he doesn't really get receipt. Then did you really sell to business or did you really sell to private person? So it is kind of a little bit dilemma, but the basics is that if you sell B2B digital services, you don't have to worry about any VAT from your side outside Europe. However, if you sell B2C, business to consumer, then you should worry a lot. Again, if you don't sell through any platform or app store, then you need to charge that to the private person. So, for example, if you sell into private people directly from your website and you take the payment and so forth, you need to register then in one VAT country, and you need to charge about 20% VAT to these people in Europe, and that needs to be paid into the tax authorities. So next, please. So now we go to e-commerce on goods. These are products. For example, Amazon, eBay, or you can even have your own warehouse in Europe. You ship it in a warehouse in Holland or somewhere, and you sell it on to people and actually also businesses in Europe as well. Then you do, if you have, in the first sample I have here, actually we're saying that you're selling from your own American warehouse. So that means you have an American website and you store your goods in the United States or outside the European Union. Then the customer will be responsible for the import. So that means that you get an order from you have a website, you have your storage in the United States, you get a customer from United Kingdom. Linda Jones in London will buy something from you. Then she is basically responsible for the import and duty to United Kingdom. So that means that she buys something from you from $100. It comes to the UK border customs, and there she will be contacted and have to pay out duty and VAT. So that is simpler for you in a way. It's just that you have to be very, very clear to your customers that they are responsible for the import duty and VAT to their countries, whatever it is. You are dealing with private people and, they're not informed. So if you set it up like this and you ship it over, they pay you $100, and then all of a sudden to get it cleared through customs, they have to pay another $30 of VAT and duty. They usually don't get very happy. So here the communication to your customer has to be crystal clear, and also how you ship has to also be crystal clear. You can sometimes set it up so that you add on duty and VAT to customers internationally, but then you have to make sure that you use a shipper such as FedEx or UPS who really can clear the customs on your behalf and charge all these fees back to you. If you ship through the normal mail services, then they are not set up. They can't do this. They will contact the customer and ask them to pay duty and VAT before they clear it. And note that, for example, in Europe, right now you can ship in VAT and duty free for about $20. So if you get orders for less than $20, generally speaking, you can ship it in and there will be no duty and VAT. This is to change pretty soon. Sweden already have changed this, other countries will. So that means that no matter how small the amount of the sale is, VAT and duty up to 30% will be due. So be aware that you learn how this works, you set up your website and the information to customers very, very clearly. Next. So this is instead if you are storing in Europe, for example, UK or Netherlands, or a fulfillment warehouse of Amazon, for example. They have basically warehouses in United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, and Spain mostly. And that means that you are shipping into one of their fulfillment warehouse or your own. You do the import. You are then selling on the websites in Europe, and you now have to you ship from this warehouse in Europe. That means for sure that you need to register for VAT in the country of the warehouse. So if your warehouse in Holland, you need to register for that in Holland. If you ship into United Kingdom fulfillment of Amazon, you have to register for that in United Kingdom. You will be assessed duty and VAT upon import. I will show you how that works. And you also need to charge that to the customers. And that basically works. And then you report all this to the UK tax authorities. Ultimately, that means that the VAT is not a charge to you again, but it is to the private person. You, though, have to pay for the compliance and the VAT filing and all that, which is a little bit burdensome to do, and also vary from country to country what country you choose to put it in. Some countries are a lot more easier, such as UK, Germany, Holland, France. Some other countries are a lot more complicated and costly, such as Southern Europe and Eastern Europe, for example. Next. So to show you now what happens when a product is imported to any other countries in the world that has VAT, so that is basically all countries except United States, pretty much. Again, China, Argentina, Chile, South Africa, all of Europe, all of Asia, so forth. This is what happened. You prepare a commercial invoice from America, for example, say for 10,000. Then it comes to the border, and in this case, we say come into the UK. Then duty is due. Everybody knows that. Everybody expects that. Duty is usually around 3 to 5-7%. Everybody knows that. So that is payable to customs before they release the products. Then on top of that, this is not known to most American companies. They also add on the VAT. So for example, if it goes into UK, you also have to pay 20% VAT to customs. So in this case, this is 2,000 sterling pound. That's a lot of money. And in US, you're usually not used to that. So therefore, you absolutely need to understand this will happen. How do you handle it so that the VAT does not become a cost to you? Very important to know. And if you now have a warehouse in United Kingdom, for example, you are registered for that, you import under there, that means that this 2,060 sterling in this case is refundable to you. If you don't do this correctly, that 2,000 will end up as a cost to you, and that of course is usually the whole margin, so that is not good. So please be prepared and please learn how you do this and learn before you ship, because it varies from country to country and what you do. Next. So now if you sell to on the websites in Europe, for example, Amazon, this is also very important for you to know that when you state prices on the EU websites for sale to mainly private people, you have to state the price including VAT. That is required usually by law or by trade. So the customer in Europe, if you sell B2B, business to business, you always quote, you state your prices not including that. But if you sell to a private person, you have to state your prices including that. It doesn't work like in the US where I go and buy something in a store and I see the price, I pay for the product and they add on the sales tax at that point. No, the prices that you see in stores and on website includes that. So when you sell on Amazon, you state something, for example, or your own website or something in Europe, you have to state the price including that. So that means, for example, if you would like to get 1,000 sterling pound for a product, you have to state 1,200 as the price because the customer needs to have it including that. And do note that they also add that to the freight and handling as well. Everything. You don't have to state that in your price, but you for sure have to state the price including that. So keep that in mind too. Next. So then if you do a VAT declaration, so in this case we said that you ship in from US to the fulfillment warehouse in the United Kingdom. There you go to stored until they are sold on the websites all over Europe for Amazon. Again, as long as you only have the warehouse in UK, you only need a VAT declaration in UK. If you also put in products in the fulfillment warehouse in Germany, Italy, and Spain, you have to register in all these 3 countries too. So don't do that as a start. Try to collect one country for Amazon for storage first until your sales really take off. Then considering store it in the other countries as well, because you have to register in each country, declare, and that is a costly thing to do from a compliance point of view. So for example, here you say in a month that you have charged 4,000 sterling pounds to the Amazon customers. You also paid out 2,060 sterling to the UK customs when you imported. So now in your VAT account, you really have 1,940. This you have to pay into the tax authorities. So again, all that you incur, you can deduct, claim back against the VAT that you have collected from your customers, and this you pay into the tax authorities. Sometimes you even get a refund, because it can happen that you ship in a big shipment 1 month and you haven't sold it yet, so you pay out more VAT than you have collected from your customer. In that case, you get a refund from the tax authorities. You declare to the tax authorities that I paid out 4,000 in VAT to customs, but I only collected 2,060. Then the UK tax authorities will refund 1,940 to you. So the VAT is always should be in a balance account, always be 0 at the end of the day. But the compliance issue here, filing, that is the work and cost that you will incur. Next. So some important facts just to kind of add this up. VAT registration when trading in the EU may be a legal requirement, particularly if you ship in goods and sell from there, and also if you sell digital services from your own website directly to the customer, not through a platform or app stores. There are frequent audits from the EU tax authorities. People ask us quite often, what happens if I don't do it? Well, maybe nothing will happen, but in that case, keep in mind that if you ever want to sell your company or go public, those due diligence people, they know this. So if they go in and check on this and look back and say, oh my goodness, you sold in for 1 million, 2 million, 10 million to Europe and you haven't done this, that will be a big problem for you when you're going to try to sell or go public. That's one thing. But also the audits from the tax authorities are getting intense. They are, for example, auditing Amazon and eBay a lot, and they go in and ask for all the information from the merchants that are dealing with them, and then they go to the merchants. So they are getting more and more frequent audits also for American companies. For example, we have seen that Germany can contact an American company that is not registered for that, but they have issues, and they can go after them. So do count on that you will be caught by the tax authorities. Also keep in mind that if you want to behave legally, ever want to sell your company, go public, the due diligence people will absolutely know this. So it is good to do the compliance up front. It is also an advantage to register, because it means that the VAT is refundable to you. If you don't register and you pay out all this VAT, you can't get it back. So therefore, it also makes sense from your financial point of view, which is unusual for tax, I think. And try to use the VAT-friendly country when possible. That is mostly Western Europe, as I said. For example, the UK, the Netherlands, Ireland, Germany, France, Scandinavia are good VAT-friendly country, means that it is less costly to do the compliance from there. It gets a lot more costly if you go to Southern Europe and Eastern Europe. And next. And now I'm going to turn back to Susanna again. So I thank you very much for listening to this part. And Susanna, you welcome to take over again.
Thank you very much, Britta. That was great, very succinct. I will try. I'm going to talk through some serious case studies about e-commerce and VAT. I will try and summarize them, though, to try and leave a bit of time for questions, because I do see the clock ticking. But I wanted to leave you just with a couple of images about how we use, or how our clients, I should say, use websites internationally to really grow their business, and using their e-commerce websites. And here you have just put it so diagrammatically. You know, it's one thing that's great about different kinds of websites is that you could use them for different objectives at different times. So, for example, you could say, this website now, I've got a major website, it's ticking over, it's doing well. I'm going to do a little bit of social media to generate leads ahead of a trade show. Or else I'm going to put up find a distributor page on the same website. And that can be a website in Germany, that can be a website in Spain, wherever. They're all very active social media and internet markets that respond very well to dedicated localized websites. So just to be aware that once you set up your localized website in Europe for e-commerce, that you could then use it for different objectives at different times, and that really helps you build up your strategy very well. I'm just going to leave you with two small case studies that just to try and give some pictures to what we've been talking about. This is a U.S. company, it was a client of ours, and they set up a Spanish localized website. That means that it is fully, it's not translated, it's fully embedded within the online environment that it needs to be. So it's optimized for the local Spanish Google. It's optimized for those local markets, and the pictures and the currency, the measurements, everything else is in tune, so that anyone coming on it from that market immediately recognizes it in terms of the e-commerce. It is also compliant with online regulation and, of course, with tax. So I'll leave it with that one. And then there's another, just a case study example. This was, again, it's a US company who started off just with two European websites, a UK and Germany, I think, were their first two. And they've since gone much further internationally across Europe and across now the world with dedicated localized websites. This, I think, is interesting as well, as because it's very much a B2B company, so a business-to-business company, but they've decided to have an e-commerce platform on their website in order to better control, manage, and access their distributors. So they could have many distributors in each market. This way, all the distributors centralize the order on their local website, and the company benefits as well from, first of all, seeing a real transparency on the order and having a window on the end client, which was a very important feature for this company and a very important objective for their website localization. So, and again, just to say, of course, the website is fully compliant both with online, and then the company fully compliant with all of their VAT. So I hope I've left a little bit of time then for some questions. John, are there any questions coming?
There are indeed, and I think what we'll do is we're just going to take the top four, and that'll be two for Britta, two for Susanna. Britta, this is a good one. How does our company get a VAT number? How do you get a VAT number?
Yeah, in some countries you can apply directly, so to speak, and that will be, for example, UK and Holland. It is an application process where you fill out some questions and you have to apply. Usually you have to send in your articles of incorporation, bank info, and so on and so forth. And that's how you get that number. Other countries, you cannot do it directly. You have to have a physical rep in the country, such as, for example, for France, Belgium, most countries, I would say. And therefore, you need to, they need to do this application for you. But again, you need to send in articles of incorporation, bank info, and explain why you need to register. Of course, this is super hard to do in real life, and that's why we assist, for example, mostly North American companies in this process, because it is like with dealing with IRS in US, how do I do that? Well, here's a website. It's very, very complicated to do. So we help them to explain how to do it and help them in the whole process, because it's not only about getting VAT number, it's also about charging VAT correctly, know how to ship, how to do the VAT filings, and so on and so forth. It's a whole process.
Britta, thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense, and the representation piece. Susanna, this is a good one. This is sort of business sense, I guess. They're asking, which markets should I go for first? I guess that's a e-commerce thing. Which markets first?
Almost all the markets across Europe are very vibrant in terms of e-commerce. All of them are very valid and viable. But I think typically what we would see is we see companies that either say, okay, this is new to me, so I'm going to go to those countries that are both easiest and largest, so that the investment cost is quickly recouped. So we would say, if you're new to e-commerce across Europe, then remember that statistic that UK, France, Germany represents about 2/3 of all e-commerce across Europe. So if you've got those sussed, you're on very firm ground. That allows you a large enough field, a large enough market in which to recoup the costs of setting up the e-commerce business. We occasionally also get companies who say, yes, I'm in some of those markets, but which markets should I now test out on? What markets should I go for? And if they're looking to test out a market, then they could also go for some smaller ones where they say, well, the cost of mistake is less. So it depends on your objective. But if you're just really starting out, most of the companies we find will go for one of the three large ones, Germany, France, UK, depending on their product, depending on their competitors, depending on their language skills, they would then choose one of those three. That's probably what we see most happening.
Thank you for that. And so quickly now to Britta. Britta, I love this one. This one, it would be one of my favorites. How can we know how much VAT refund our company may claim? I love it. Get that money back.
Yeah, that's kind of a simple question. If you do this correctly from the start and learn how to do it, then basically all the VAT that you incur will be refundable to you. If you don't do it correctly and don't learn your lesson ahead of time, then the 20% VAT will end up as a cost to you. So I think that's the answer to that. It's 20% VAT will all be refundable if you do this correctly.
I guess good sound advice. Look at it ahead of time. So, okay. Yeah. Susanna, how secure are websites? There you go. I guess it's from a transactional e-commerce point of view. How secure are websites?
That's a question that the entire internet world has to ask continuously to make sure that they maintain levels of security. I think what's important is to have some basic security rules. First of all, for example, all websites today should be secure. And the way that you can tell that is if you go up to your search bar and you say HTTP, it's not secure. If it says HTTPS, it's secure. So that's a sort of, just a quick one. So that an easy fix, make sure all your websites have an S next to that HTTP. If you want further information on that, we've got quite a bit on our website and some blogs. Next on is, we get a lot of questions about hosting, particularly if you're looking to go in export markets, have export websites. That could be tricky. And a lot of the hosting can be with very large US companies or British or German, or, very reliable large companies that you say, okay, I can trust my website to be hosted with that organization. So again, don't forget to inquire and look at who's actually hosting your website and how that's done. That's some of the two big basic ones that I would go for. And then I guess that's the third ingredient for any e-commerce site is to spend a lot of time, a lot of thought, a lot of experience about payment methods and payment security. That's a whole chapter in itself.
Indeed, Susanna, those payment gateways. Well, look, I think we must close now. It's wonderful. We are on time. I'm closing it down now, which means that I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you for participating. We hope you've enjoyed the webinar. We hope that you found lots of useful information and got lots of takeaways to help you ensure that you understand VAT and selling online in Europe. As we close it down, you will now get the survey. So please give us an extra 15 seconds of your time, and the recording will be sent directly to your email box on Friday. So watch out for that. This is me saying Thank you to Susanna. Great job. Britta, thank you so much. What a good job you've done. On behalf of everybody who attended, we're going to close that applause and thank you. And we wish everybody success as they go out there and they sell and do successful business online in Europe with the VAT implications. Thank you for joining us, and we wish you a good day.